Here's an example focused on monopoly, such that we have one firm operating in a market. Due to barriers to entry, there are no other firms. And we're going to look to see how price and quantity are determined in this market. So here we have our price and quantity graph, our inverse demand function, and we have an equation for our demand function, so we're going to graph that out. So when Q is equal to 0, P will equal to 200. And so we'll start that right here, where P will be 200. And when P is 0, we solve for Q, and Q will then equal to 100. So we can draw this graph that looks something like this, where it goes from 200 to 100, and that's our demand curve. Now we can also graph out our marginal revenue curve. Now remember, the marginal revenue is going to be different than the demand because a monopolist is a price setter. So when they set the price and they charge a higher price, they get the price effect, which means they get a higher price for each item they sell, but they also have the output effect, which means they sell fewer items. And so we can write the marginal revenue equation is going to equal, it has the same intersection, but would be below the demand equation. So it'll be minus 4Q. You can use calculus to prove why that's the exact case. And so if that's here, it's going to start at 200 and come down here. And the marginal revenue curve will be here, and that'll cross at, oops, it doesn't look quite very well. It'll cross at 50. Now the supply equation we can graph out as well. So it's going to start at 0 and go up. And so this is our supply, and it's going to be 4Q. Now when we think of supply, that's the market supply, but there's only one firm producing. And so the market supply is also equal to the marginal cost. So we can call this the marginal cost. And now that we have that, the rule we use is our optimal price is determined when marginal revenue equals marginal cost. So we can find where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. That occurs right here. We draw a line down, and that is the quantity the monopolist will produce. We draw that up to the demand equation and bring that across, and this is the price that the monopolist will charge. So we can go ahead and solve for those mathematically by saying that the marginal revenue, which we had is 200 minus 4Q, is equal to marginal cost, which is 4Q. So this is 200 equals 8Q. So Q monopolist is equal to 25. So this value here is equal to 25. Now I take this quantity right here and I put that into the demand equation. So demand is P is equal to 200 minus 2 times 25. So P is equal to 200 minus 50, or 150. So this price here is equal to 150. And so that's how a monopolist chooses their price and quantity. Now on this, we can also identify a few key points or areas. We can identify this area right here. Let's make that a little more visible. This area right here is going to be our consumer surplus. And that's because that's the demand equation to the price. The price down to the supply, or in this case, the marginal cost, this area will be the producer surplus. And that leaves this area right here, and that's going to be the dead weight loss. And so we see here that a monopolist is inefficient because they are charging a higher price than perfect competition would. They're producing lower quantity than perfect competition will. Furthermore, there's this opportunity right here where a consumer is willing to buy the good at that price, and the firm would be willing to supply the good to supply that. But because of the law of one price, or because our monopolist is only charging one price, that does not happen. So that is dead weight loss. And so that's how we can look at efficiencies of a monopolist. We'd say a monopolist is inefficient. Now, to calculate profits, we'd want to include one more curve, and that would be the average total cost curve. And based on that curve, it would be price down to the average total cost. This area here, this rectangle, is the profits of the monopolist, and there's positive profits. Now you might ask, well, is there a difference between a short run and a long run? Well, in perfect competition, we had short run profits, and in the long run, we had entry into the market. Or if there was negative profits in the short run, we had exit. Well, in this case, because the monopoly, what creates monopoly are barriers to entry, firms can't exit. So for monopoly, the short run is equal to the long run. So if there are profits in the short run, because of barriers to entry, there are profits in the long run. And that's an example of how to set price and quantity and identify profits and consumer producer surplus and deadweight loss in an example with a firm that is a monopoly.